Now, as chairman of the board, it's my privilege to be able to, unlike I normally would introduce ladies first, but I've got our executive director here, Estuardo Rodriguez, who is the executive director of the Friends of the National Museum of the American Latino. He's also a principal at the Raven Group. He's been an executive in government at Housing and Urban Development. And the Friends of the National Museum of the American Latino, which I have the great pleasure of chairing, is the only organization dedicated to the creation of a National and American Latino Museum within the Smithsonian Institution. A round of applause for Estuardo. Also with us is Raquel Tames. She is the CEO of the Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers. That organization serves as a role model in the Hispanic community to empower the Hispanic community to realize its fullest potential through STEM awareness, access, support, and development. Round of applause for Raquel. We also have the living legend Esther Aguilera with us today. Esther, in her most recent role, is the president and CEO of the Latino Corporate Directors Association. That organization has the goal of increasing Hispanic participation in boardrooms across the United States. Round of applause for Esther. And last but certainly not least, we have Sandra Behrman. She is, in her most recent role, the Senior Vice President for Communications and Marketing at Unidos US, formerly known as NCLR, and it'll take me a couple of weeks before I get used to saying Unidos US. And that organization, as we all know, serves the Hispanic community through research, policy analysis, and state and national advocacy efforts, as well as programs that work in the communities nationwide. A round of applause for Sandra, please. All right, so we will focus our energies on making sure that this panel is informative, interesting, and fun for you all as an audience. We'll focus in three specific areas. Number one, we'll talk about the positive impact that these organizations have had on the community. Number two, we'll talk about bringing Hispanic leaders together and the importance of doing that. And finally, the vital importance of having organizations come together to collaborate to have a positive impact on the community and on the nation. So this is about both leadership and impact on the nation. So, having said that, I will begin with having each one of our panelists talk for 2 minutes about the impact that their organizations have had on the community. So we'll begin with Sandra.
Fantastic, thank you. And thank you for the introductions and the invitation to be here today. Unidos US was founded 49 years ago, so we're about to enter our 50th year as a national organization helping to advance the Latino community in general, and we have a number of different issue areas that we work in, everything from healthcare to housing, to education, to immigration, among other things. So our impact has been strong over the past 50 years, and if you allowed me to just give you a couple of examples of how Unidos US has collaborated with other organizations, the community at large, government, and as all different types of sectors to advance the community. A couple of facts for you on Unidos US. We've helped more than 33,000 families buy their first home and provide housing counseling since 600,000 through our home ownership network. Since 1998, more than 35,000 students a year receive the quality education they deserve through our network of 115 community and charter schools, which makes it the largest Latino-focused, Latino-led charter network. We help close the gap of Head Start enrollees, bringing Hispanic children to parity with the general population. So now 37% of all Hispanic children are enrolled. Through our voter registration and civic engagement efforts, we have helped millions become citizens and helped register 500,000 new voters since 2008. We were key to ensuring that Every Student Succeeds Act, ESSA, included new protections for nearly 5 million English learners and held states accountable for English learning performance. We were instrumental in shaping the Immigration Reform and Control Act of 1986 and gave legal status to 3 million undocumented immigrants. And lastly, a fight that we're still fighting today to ensure it stays in place is successful advocacy for the Affordable Care Act, which gave the most vulnerable Latino families unprecedented access. And since 2013, 2.6 million Latinos received coverage and that's an 8% drop in the rate of uninsurance for Latinos. So clearly we've been involved in a number of different fronts, but not alone, all in collaboration with different sectors of society.
Thank you very much. Esther, if you could speak to us about the Latino Corporate Directors Association.
Thank you, Danny. So we are one of the newest organizations. We've been around just a couple of years, and LCDA, Latino Corporate Directors Association, was started by a small group of Latino directors, and also initially launched with the help of HITEC, the Hispanic Association on Corporate Responsibility. And the directors got together because of our very, very low numbers on corporate boards. And so our main focus is increasing our numbers on corporate boards. And our strategy to get there is we're focused on increasing demand and supply. So I'll briefly go into that a little bit, but just on the numbers, of the Fortune 1000 companies, Latinos hold 2% of those corporate board seats. That totals about 208 seats altogether. So the numbers, and again, that's just a seat, it's not the individual. So the numbers are really small, and yet our community has so much talent. And so it's our responsibility not just to complain about the numbers, but to actually bring together a concerted effort to, as I mentioned, our strategy to increase demand. And we're doing that by working with search firms, corporations, boardrooms, and the investor community. The investor community is very involved with trying to diversify boards because it makes business sense. And so we are working to create more opportunity and grow the demand and make the business case for having more Latinos on boards. And then on the supply side is we're actually this year launching a program to grow the pipeline and really develop the next bench of Latino directors. So this November, we have our annual meeting, and we're launching what we're calling the Board Ready Institute. And we have, we have such tremendous talent, C-suite level Latinos. We obviously need to increase the bench and increase our numbers in the C-suite, but it should not be an excuse because there is the talent. Right now, we often still hear that corporate boards and search firms can't find Latino talent. So it is up to us to not only bring together our current directors, but also to, what I say, HITEC says they're about pull up and push up. We're about breaking that glass ceiling and opening the door for many more to come through. That's what we're doing.
Raquel?
Good morning. My name is Raquel Tamés, and like LCDA, the Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers wants to increase, one of its objectives is to increase Hispanics in STEM, in science, technology, engineering, and math. And Danny mentioned our mission, changing lives by empowering the Hispanic community to realize its fullest potential to impact the world through STEM, through awareness, access, support, and development. But our vision is to have a world where Hispanics are highly valued and influential as leading innovators, scientists, mathematicians, and engineers. We are a storied organization. We've been around since 1974, and it was an organization started by professional engineers for professional engineers. Currently, we have about 10,000 members. Of those, 8,000 are students, and when I say students, it's undergraduate, graduate, and then we also have about 2,000 professional members. We have over 200 chapters across the US, almost 250, with a good portion of those, 175 plus at the undergrad and graduate student level, as well as 54 professional chapters. We also have junior chapters, and those are chapters at high schools. So it's truly a pipeline from where we have programming from pre-K through 12 through undergraduate, graduate. We're doing a pilot with community colleges, and then we have our professionals as well. We're organized into 7 regions across the US. The majority of our members are in mechanical engineering at 30%, with about 15% in computer sciences, and the smallest percentage for us is in biomedical engineering. So we have some work to do there. If we break it up into genders, about 75% of our members are male and about 25% are female. And so we have work to do there as well. And we have programming around Latinas in STEM, and in fact, it's a group that calls themselves the Sheptinas. And so we'll be building that out and doing more with Latinas in STEM. I've been in my role less than 2 months. And folks have asked me, well, what's that like? And admittedly, I'm drinking from the proverbial high-powered fire hose. I think, too, some folks are wondering, because I'm actually a lawyer. My background is legal and litigation, and most recently I served as a chief legal officer at a national nonprofit. And someone asked me, well, we're a bunch of engineers and you're a lawyer, how are we going to communicate? And I said, well, I hope we're communicating now, but I think at the end of the day, if we're all passionate about Hispanics and their education and their empowerment, if we're all passionate about Hispanics in STEM, then we're all speaking the same language. And so I think it's very important. I'm grateful and very excited about my role as the CEO of SHIP, and it's an organization that has a great legacy. My theme for this year is to build upon that legacy. The organization has tremendous potential. We'll be focusing on professionals and programming, innovative, immersive programming for professionals, and a lot to do with Latinas in STEM. So more to come.
Thank you. Estuardo.
Great. Well, I think it worked out really well to go in this direction because every one of the organizations and leaders to my right contributes to what one day will be a museum on the National Mall. The work that I've been doing for the last 12 years out of the Rabin Group has been to focus on completing the story of our American history. 30 million tourists go to the National Mall every year. They visit all of the museums out there across the gamut, and they're there simply to understand what American history is about. There are maybe 2%, based on the last study, maybe 3%, of exhibits across all the institutions that focus on women, African Americans, Asian Pacific Islanders, Hispanics, and the LGBT community. 2% of all those museums combined reflect any diversity whatsoever. The African American Museum opened up last year and has broken all records in terms of the amount of time people spend in the museum, the amount of money spent in that one single museum, and the overflow crowd that goes into all of the other museums. It is set to break a record of the most visited museum, not just in the country, but possibly in the world eventually. So our goal has been to complete the telling of US history. It's not a message of we need to tell Latino stories alone. It's about filling the gaps, making sure that everyone understands that St. Augustine is actually the oldest city in the country, that before the Pilgrims came, there were already missions and cathedrals and city governments as everyone moved west. I grew up in Northern Virginia, DC native born, but my family moved over to Northern Virginia, and I understood US history in that way, that the Pilgrims landed and they moved west and they civilized everything. But no one told me the 500 years history, not just of the Spanish, but the presence of the Mexican indigenous community and what they contributed to the Southwest and how they built everything up as well. So that telling and expanding of American history is critical, not just because we as Latinos want to brag about it, but because it gives a better understanding of where we are and how diverse we are and how indebted we are to that diversity and why when we listen to politics and media and hear different sides debate, throwing the Latino community in the middle, it's erroneous because you're pretending as if one specific community just got here. And that's a flawed premise when you begin any debate or any conversation. Without understanding the history, you're bound to make mistakes and misjudgments about the ultimate outcome that you're pursuing. So I've had the honor and pleasure. Obviously, this is 12 years going, so clearly I'm committed to this. Take vitamins every day, a couple push-ups, do what I gotta do. But I'm actually a communications professional, government affairs, and a lawyer in my own right. Wear a separate hat at the Raven Group, where we do government affairs for nonprofit and corporate clients. But we raised our hand back in the end of 2004, beginning of 2005, to set up an advisory group just to help this mission move forward. And 2017, we're still here. We've incorporated as a 501c3. We've traveled the country to build up a foundation of support among corporate leaders, education leaders, university leaders, the community, everyone from left to right. It's very much a bipartisan effort. We're honored to have bipartisan support in Congress, and with that support, we're going to move this through. And thanks to Danny's leadership as chair, we've made great progress. And so thank you for having me here.
Thank you all very much. A round of applause for our panelists. We're going to take a bit of a different turn now. We're going to ask Esther and Sandra to take a moment each to talk about the importance of organizations collaborating to have a positive impact on the community. So if the two of you can have a conversation for a minute or two with each other about that importance.
Well, for me, I would say it starts with, we have so much to contribute and have been contributing to the point of Estuardo, and we need to be represented at all levels and have the social, economic, and opportunities that this country, the American dream, represents. I'm part of the American dream. I was born in Mexico, and I've been lucky enough to live in Washington, D.C. for 30 years now, working on behalf of the Latino community and advancing our community. But for me, it's about this little young man right there. Estuardo, you brought your son. I am so, what's his name?
Estuardo, of course. But he goes by Nicolas. Say hi, Nicolas.
Nicolas. What a... What we're doing today for me is about him and the next generation. If we don't do our part today to open up those doors, open up, be more savvy as a community to take our rightful places, then we leave him more work to do that. Instead, he can, when he gets into our shoes, he'll be able to do even more than we ever dreamed about. So I'm...
No, I completely agree, and I think if we look at our vision, and Raquel talked about the vision of SHIP, is if we were to live in a world where all the barriers were eliminated for Latinos to reach their fullest potential, we could close our doors. So eventually we want to get to that point, but we at Unidos US know that we can't do that alone. And it is, if you look at all the issues facing Latinos today, even more heightened, and we're protecting the gains that we've already made over the past many years. And to think that one organization or one leader could help achieve that on their own, I don't think is realistic at all. So in being able to collaborate with organizations, not only similar organizations, but across different sectors, I think is going to be the key to the success of eliminating those barriers for our community. If you think about how Unidos US was founded, we were founded by 7 organizations in the Southwest who said, I think we could achieve more if we collaborate and join together, and therefore Southwest Council of La Raza was born. Today, we have 300 affiliates around the country, locally based organizations that convene several times a year to come together and tackle those issues, to share best practices, and to see how united they could move forward to help the Nicolases of the world, right? And make sure that we're eliminating those barriers and making some more gains throughout the year. So fully agree that collaboration needs to be not just across your own sector, but we work a lot with government. From a bipartisan perspective, we work with corporate partners. We work with government officials on the local and national level. So clearly, there is an opportunity to collaborate even more to break those barriers.
Awesome.
I have one example of also where, again, that we're collaborating. So I mentioned the program that we're launching to build the bench of Latinos to serve on corporate boards. And we couldn't do that without key partners. We're partnering with HITEC, with Alpha, with Pro Hispanica, and all of the organizations who are building a pipeline so that there is a next step. And so that's one specific example of collaboration that it takes all of us working together. And no one owns one issue. We all need to be part of the solution.
Very true. Great exchange, and we're fortunate to have many leaders, future leaders. So, Raquel and Estuardo, if you can take just a brief moment to talk about the importance of bringing those leaders together.
Sure. To springboard off of what Esther and Sandra were talking about, I am a firm believer that we are better together. And since I've onboarded with SHIP, the welcome that I have received from other leaders across organizations, whether they're STEM related or Hispanic related, has been welcoming. It's been warm. It's been refreshing. And I've spoken to certain leaders who said, "Hey, you're coming into a new era of sorts because it wasn't always like this, right? It was highly fractured and competitive and territorial, and that is changing. And so you're coming into this new era of sorts, and I think that that's right. I know SHIP, for example, we're partnering with other STEM-related and other engineering organizations under what we're calling the 50K Coalition. And so that's bringing in the Society of Women Engineers, the National Society of Black Engineers, ACES, the American Indian Sciences and Engineering Society. And 50K stands for we are all aiming to bring the numbers up of undergraduates in engineering to 50,000 by 2025. And these disparate organizations with different leaders are coming together to try and make that happen. We're also coming together under another sort of collective impact strategy called Leverage, and that's actually focused on faculty, because there's research out there that indicates that for diverse students, it's important to see role models that look like them. So that means teachers and professors that look like them in areas of STEM, for example. So the whole idea under Leverage and that coming together and that collaboration of all of these different organizations, it's about 42 organizations that have come together under that grant from the NSF, the National Science Foundation, that is focused on diversifying our faculty at the teacher level and at the professor level, and mainly at the professor level. So you're seeing more of this, and certainly my philosophy and my approach as the CEO of SHIP is to go and work with the CEOs of other organizations. I've already met with Sid Wilson, for example, of ACER, with Tomas Savino of Pro Hispanica, and I'm meeting with many leaders. And I think at the end of the day, yes, we are doing comparable things, but we're all adding value in very unique and differentiated ways. And to the extent that we can bring that together and do more, that's going to be my approach. And I think that there's a huge opportunity for that.
Yeah, I think the highlighting piece is key, because every organization out there, even probably all of you may know an organization locally that tries to create mentorship programs. But that one piece of simply highlighting, giving a Latina engineer the platform to address a larger audience, or the mere fact that Ellen Ochoa heads up a very critical piece of NASA in Houston, just her mere presence is an educational motivator for so many students. That's really the work that we do. Beyond the legislative side of creating the museum and the fundraising side, we spend a lot of our time through our social media highlighting stories that few people talk about. Because we understand that sometimes a student or a mid-level career person, for that matter, can simply see a story and say, well, damn, I could do that. She did it, he did it, I could do that. And that role model example, without the programs, without the lending a hand to come up, that inspiration is what we're also trying to convey, that there are no limitations, just like with any other community, there are no limitations for you, outside of the ones that you set for yourself. And that dialogue that we share with more than 400,000 people that we are connected with through our Facebook, Twitter, our email listservs. We have about 450,000 people that we work with. Now, eventually, we want to be in the Justin Bieber numbers of 2, 3, 5 million people, but you look at the size of the Latino community, we should definitely be a lot higher than that. But that's a platform that we have that regularly we'll get an email from a teacher somewhere in the country saying, oh my God, I didn't know that. Thank you for sharing that. I'm going to share that with my kids today, right? So you've got worker bees who focus on creating these pipelines, and then you have those people who are simply role models and they don't realize it, right? And that's part of the work as well, of making sure that we are spotlighting, highlighting, giving people an opportunity to share a piece of the work that they do. And even with the great work that all of you do, you're doing that. You're just giving someone an opportunity through your platforms to talk about what they do, or at least be out there as a shining example, which I applaud, and it makes it a lot easier for everyone else to be inspired.
Well, I don't know about you all. I'm very inspired by the remarks from these 4 wonderful leaders. Now let's take an opportunity to listen from the audience to see if you've got any questions that you'd like to pose to the audience members. So lift up your hand if you have a question. Sir.
Salvador Segura with Microsoft. I have a question for Raquel. So I work with the Bellevue School District back in Seattle, mentoring programs, helping the kids with science and math and stuff like that. Also helping them see beyond high school, right? Start thinking going to college. The challenge I have is not with the kids, it's with the families. Because they don't see that as an option. They think, you know what, we have high school, that's it, and they need to start working with, my business or whatnot, right? So does SHIP have any resources, or are they thinking about mentoring programs for the families? Because I think it's important to get that support as well.
Thank you for that question. And we do. We do have a community outreach and a program across the U.S. That our chapters help facilitate and host. It's called Noche de Ciencias, right? So it actually is outreach to pre-K all the way to high school, and it includes the parents. And so it's a week-long, they're 3-hour programs with all kinds of sort of education, awareness, education, training, and hands-on activities that are age-appropriate. We have sort of workshops for the parents to help them understand the importance of STEM. We also have, we educate about the college process, the application process, financial aid. And our numbers, our survey results are increasing with better understanding on the part of the parents and the families. So more to come. We continue to build out the Noche de Ciencias. And that was actually a solution that came out of our leadership conference. So we have a leadership conference at SHIP where we bring in all of our student leaders and we teach them about SHIP and STEM and what's going on. And we have a competition there, a case study of sorts. And Noche de Ciencias was born out of our own leaders at SHIP. And so more to come, but I absolutely agree with you. We need to do more with our parents so that they can appreciate the importance of education and education in STEM.
Thank you for that question. Another question over here, ma'am.
So this is more of how do you work with families even when they are in positions that understand all of this. But I was the president of the Latino organization in my university, and I came here as a senior in high school from Spain. And being Latino or Hispanic you were proud of it, right? In my high school, in my university, and we were different, and we put events out, and we educated our peers. Sadly now, I'm pregnant, so I might get a little, but sadly now, I have friends who have kids who are going to school, and because of our present situation, they are hiding, especially if they look like me, they are hiding that they are Latino, and it is obviously very sad. And how are you working with families to continue that proudness and kind of push through the current situation so that our kids don't have to hide who they are?
Thank you for that question.
Who wants to tackle that?
Thank you for that question. Anyone like to
Yeah,
take
if you
that
don't
question?
mind, I'd love to highlight the fact that it's now more important than ever for us to double down on the stories and the examples that we share. Every time we share an Ellen Ochoa story, or the myriad of history pieces that I mentioned earlier about St. Augustine, it gives our network a sense of belonging, an opportunity to say, what is this guy talking about, or what are those hate groups talking about? We're here and we own as much of this legacy as anyone, right? And I think you're better situated and prepared to take on the animosity, hatred, racism when you have the facts. You simply can't stand there and say, well, you're wrong and you're wrong. You're always better off with understanding really where you come from, what the connection is to the United States. And I don't think anyone that has a single intellectual bone in their body can debate with you and succeed when you've got the kind of history and the ties that we do to the country. So I have a hard time myself, not just with my son, but my two daughters, trying to get them through. We're very fortunate to live in a very diverse area, but the reality is they have friends that don't agree with them necessarily, and it's sad to see them debate as kids, with those diverse views. And there's a lot of emotion that's passed on from their parents to them. And so all we can do is, in a very balanced way, provide them a bit of what's really happening so that they're not overwhelmed, but some understanding of what's happening so that they can respond, and then arm them with the facts. And that's what I have found. And of course, I like to tell my wife all the time, I'm an amateur at being a parent, so I'm making this up as I go along. I've not gone to school for this. So you act with both emotion and based on best practices, as you've seen your parents and others do.
If I could add also, so of our 300 affiliates, there's a lot of them serving immigrants and families. So there's a number of programs happening on a local level. We have a national initiative that we are starting in September called Rise Above. At the beginning of the year, we engaged a research company, just given all the hateful rhetoric and all the division that is now instilling fear in not just Latino families, but a number of different groups. And the research showed us what messages were really driving more positive outcomes to do away with the fear and division. And Rise Above is a national initiative to help communities come together and come to a common ground that diversity makes us stronger. So that initiative launches in September with 20 of our affiliates at the local level. And nationally on October 18th, I believe, we're having a digital day of action to have people come forward and tell their stories of how diversity makes us stronger. So it's one initiative, it's about storytelling, but it's also about what language and messages help me bridge those divisions and help us break down this very negative rhetoric. And from our perspective, how do we lift up the Latino narrative as something that's much more positive? So a lot more work to be done, but this initiative in particular will launch in September, and October we'll have that digital day of action through our social media networks.
I think those are excellent points. I would add also, Latinos have been in North America for over 500 years, as Estuardo mentioned. You know, he mentioned St. Augustine, Florida in 1565. I go back to Puerto Rico in 1493. So by the time the British got to Jamestown, Virginia in 1607, there were already a bunch of Latinos saying, bienvenidos, what took you so long? We've got so many contributions that we've made to this country throughout its long history. We should be very proud. We've got nothing to be ashamed of. And as we move forward, we'll begin to recognize those contributions even more. So we should be proud.
And the only thing I would add is, at the macro level, you hear us talking here today about coming together and collaborating at an organizational level, and I think that that's important. And you know, coming together and doing that at a micro level, at an individual level, I think we each have a responsibility to support one another, support your colleagues, support people on LinkedIn when you see something good about them. We have the numbers. We can create a critical mass. We are a critical mass. We need to start a movement, and we need to support each other, and that's easy to do. Retweet, like something on Facebook, pass on and forward a story about a Hispanic or Latino colleague, a professional. We can do that. That's easy. And then at the macro level, our organizations coming together.
On the numbers front, as difficult as it is seeing, you know, these portrayals of the community, at the end of the day, our numbers, we're not going anywhere. Okay, we are already 18% of the population. Our purchasing power is now 2.1 trillion. There's a new study. We are, our purchasing power is growing about 5% every year, 80 to 90 million a year, and we are the growth factor for every consumer-facing company. If they want to make in the U.S., if they want to be successful, they need to tune in. I worked on Capitol Hill. I worked liaison to the White House, and you know, I think it's interesting being in this space with our corporate board leaders, because corporate America is focused on the bottom line. And while, of course, the rhetoric is not where it needs to be, I'm not hearing that from the corporate America. In fact, again, the investor community and others are the effort to diversify boards is very much alive. And so, I mean, I think we have very powerful economic numbers, and that, you know, you're right. I think having numbers is one thing, how we leverage that and galvanize it is another. But it's a very, there's sectors that need to pay attention, and we still need to do more to make sure that we have more Latinos in the pipeline and in leadership roles. But we have tremendous talent, and the numbers are, the U.S. is going to succeed if we succeed. We're just too big, too much and too big a part of what's going to propel the country.
Hear, hear. We've got time for a super brief question. It's got to be super brief. It's not? All right, here's the test.
He's like,
Here's the test. Can it be answered? Can it be answered in 1 minute?
I could try it.
Go for it.
So Chef changes lives, and I'm a byproduct of that. I wouldn't be here if it weren't for Shep. And my question is, what is it that SHEP is doing to partner with organizations like HITEC to make sure that people like me can continue to come to events like this where we continue to be inspired? Because it's the reason why you exist is to empower the Hispanic community to realize its fullest potential. And people have potential within when they're in college, and the people that are in this room, they are the vision. Like, you want rooms filled like this of people. And when I'm in this room, I am so inspired by everyone that's here. And I see what's possible because you guys are here. There are people that look like me in this room that are executives, that are vice presidents, directors, managers. So I see that and I'm like, wow, I was a kid that didn't even know how I was gonna get to college. And if it weren't for SHEP, I wouldn't be working at Cisco Systems in California, because at the time, Cisco didn't recruit from the school that I graduated from. So it was by going to conferences, learning how to network, build a resume, all of that, that I am here today. And I know you've only been there for 2 months, but I just want to let you know that if it weren't for SHEP, I wouldn't be in this room. And now that I'm in this room...
Awesome. Okay. Get it.
¿Cómo te llamas? What is your name?
John Canella.
Okay, thank you, and thank you for being a SHIP member, and I hope you're a lifetime SHIP member. And more to come, no doubt. I'm assessing the organization, and I think that there is, in my less than 90-day assessment, there is a huge opportunity to do more with our members overall, specifically with our professional members, to do more collaboration and strategic alliances with organizations like HITEC, hence the reason I'm here. I think that our organizations, yes, we do things that are comparable, and there might be some overlap there. But I do believe too that, and I said it earlier, that we do things in a unique and differentiated way, and there's power in that. And so to the extent that we can come together and leverage where we're doing things differently, then I think we can do that. We have mutual purpose, and I think we need to focus on that, as opposed to, oh, you know, that organization's over there as a competitor. I don't want to see organizations as competitors. I want to see them as allies, because I do believe that we are better together.
Awesome. So, Viviana, do we have time for one more? Actually, I was going to switch it up a little bit. I'm going to ask our panelists if they can take just literally 15 seconds each to give us nuggets of wisdom, their thoughts on what leadership means or what an individual can do to be a leader within their organizations. Something very, very brief. Estrada, your pearl of wisdom.
My gosh. I'm going to take 5 seconds just to think in silence and then throw it out in the last few seconds. I can only tell you what I've seen. I am not a museum curator. I know very little about the arts. I appreciate the arts, as many of you probably do, just in your basic way of appreciating music, color, leadership. The one thing I have noticed over the last 12 years of working on the American Latino Museum is that we have so many things that differentiate us. I have traveled the country, and if I'm in New York, I have to make sure to talk about the Puerto Rican story and the Dominican story. If I'm in Miami, it's very much about the Cuban experience. And if I go around the Southwest, it's obviously the Mexican Chicano experience. There's so much leadership out there, an opportunity to highlight stories, and at the same time, highlight the divisions between us. And what will make the American Latino Museum succeed is that we put all of that aside. And it's not just the collaborations between organizations, as everyone very well lays out, but it's the understanding that we are a large segment of the nation. We have so much that distinguishes us, even if we share the same language, but we have an underlying critical foundation that brings us together. So as a Peruvian American, I'm always very happy Thank you, right? Peruvians? As a Peruvian American, I'm always very happy to talk about how the Chileans probably get on my nerves a bit, right? But well, there you go. Let me just wrap up by saying that we have to stop that. We have to stop that, and as I've traveled, I've told everybody, look, let's get into the museum first, and then ahí en el museo nos peleamos. We'll fight it out about who gets what side of this museum, but until then, ignoring those divisions really helps a lot of us succeed.
AmericanLatinoMuseum.org. Raquel.
Thank
of
you.
wisdom.
I'll leave you with a couple of questions. But before I leave you with those questions, I will say this. Build a wall, don't build a wall. We're not going anywhere. So with everything that's going on, and I don't mean to get all political on people, but with everything that's going on with the Trump administration, with immigration, with education, with Hispanics, with Latinos, with STEM, with our workforce, with the global market, the time is now. The time is now. And we can come together and be a solution for the United States and for the world, or we can continue to be a perceived problem and become irrelevant. So I have a sense of urgency as the new CEO of SHIP. Do you have a sense of urgency? And if you don't, why not?
Thank you. Esther.
Very similar. So, this country is as much ours as anybody else's, and whether some folks want to believe that the American dream is still very much alive, as much as maybe some folks don't want to believe that it is. And back to the economic point, when I said that our purchasing power is growing at 5% a year and is 2.1 trillion, that is larger. This was 2005 figures. 2015 figures. It's larger than India, Canada, a lot of different countries if we were a country in and of itself. So people talk about India as a market to go to because it's where you want to do business. Well, guess what? It's right here in the United States, and it's about what we do about it. So there's a lot of potential. The potential is for us to grab, and as Latinos, we sometimes are shy about it. So either we're going to take it on and seize it, or we're going to let it pass us by.
Thank you. Bring it home, Sandra, with a very brief comment.
Very briefly, I think leadership is not about one person or one organization, but really being a champion for the community. So I think the more that we could engage and empower our community, that will equal success for our future as an American community.
God bless you. I don't know much. I do know this. I know that we are Afro-Latinos, we are Asian Latinos, we are blonde-haired, blue-eyed, we are mulattos, we are mestizos, we are from Argentina, Colombia, Puerto Rico, all over the place. And within a generation or so, we will be about 30% of the population of the United States of America. If we hope that this country in the future will remain economically vibrant and secure, we need every single Latino in the future to feel acknowledged, respected, engaged, and involved. Peter Drucker once said that management is doing things right, leadership is doing the right things. We've been blessed to be able to hear from 4 leaders that are doing the right things. Thank you all very much, ladies and gentlemen. Round of applause for our panelists.